Well, good evening. I'm John Brofonsky. I'm the Chief of Police here in Bedford, New Hampshire, and welcome to the February Speaker Series event for Bedford BeBOLD, Building Our Lives Drug-Free. Very glad to see all of you here, and I know some of you that had stayed over for the volunteer sign-up meeting, and we're going to close the doors and lock it so you can't leave, so we're going to have to make you all sign up to do something to help us out. We have a special presentation tonight for all of you, and I know that it's going to be a captivating and very interesting 1 hour. But I want to start with, as I usually do, and set the stage for what we're going to talk about tonight. More than 20 million Americans are subject to some sort of substance abuse disorder. That's 6% of the American population today. 20 million Americans, 6% of the population. Over 2 million are addicted to painkillers or have a substance abuse disorder related to painkillers. That's 2 million out of our population that have some sort of substance abuse disorder related to painkillers. Overdose deaths now are the leading cause of death in the United States today. They've eclipsed motor vehicle accidents several years ago, and unfortunately, New Hampshire was the first state in which overdose deaths or drug-related deaths actually exceeded the number of motor vehicle fatalities, and that happened in New Hampshire several years ago. The latest stats that we have are from 2015. We don't have the 2016 numbers yet. Over 54,000 people in the United States died in 2015 as a result of some sort of substance abuse-related death. Of that 54,000, more than 30,000 people died as a result of an opioid or a painkiller-related event. So that's 30,000. That works out to roughly 90 people a day in the United States die as a result of an opioid or painkiller-related event. That's 4 per hour. So we started here at 7 o'clock tonight, and by the end of this hour, 4 people in the United States will have died in the hour that we'll be sitting here in these seats from a opioid or painkiller-related death event. In New Hampshire, we're predicting about 479 deaths. There are a number of cases that are still pending at the medical examiner's office yet. The cases haven't been determined in terms of the cause of death, but we're anticipating 479 overdose deaths in the state of New Hampshire this year. Last year there were 438, so if you do the math, that's a 7% increase. That's up from 328 in 2015. That's a 26 or 32% increase in just 2 years. We've had over 6,000 emergency department opioid-related visits in the state of New Hampshire in 2016. That's a 28% increase over the previous year. And in Bedford, we've had 17 overdose-related events in 2016. Thankfully, none were fatal, but we made 4 notifications to families in the town of Bedford. Bedford Police Department did in 2016, notifying families in Bedford that a loved one in that family had died somewhere else outside of Bedford as a result of a drug overdose. We did have 2 fatalities in 2015. We know from the 2015 Youth Behavior Risk Survey that 56 students in Bedford High School in 2015 said that they had experimented with heroin. That's enough to fill 3 classrooms worth of children in Bedford. But this is more than just about numbers. I talk about numbers all the time, but this is about people. This is about faces to those numbers. Tonight you're going to see that connection between the numbers and faces. This is about sons and daughters, moms and dads. This is about grandchildren, aunts and uncles. This is about people next door. This is about loved ones. This is about engineers and doctors and lawyers. And you'll see technicians that work in other skilled crafts, as you're going to hear about tonight. This cuts across the spectrum of socioeconomic wealth in the United States. New Hampshire ranks 3rd per capita in overdose deaths in the country, right? That is not the bronze medal that the state needs to be noted for. But right now we're 3rd in per capita deaths in the state of New Hampshire. But again, it's more than about numbers. It's about faces, it's about people, it's about tragedy, it's about loved ones. And tonight, we're going to put faces to that story. We're going to hear, you're going to hear, one element, one story about how this set of numbers affected them. It's a story that changes and is different from family to family. There is no one answer. And the people that continually ask me and others, well, what's the solution? When is this ever going to stop? When is it ever going to end? Well, there's no one easy fix. There's no one easy solution. There's no one easy answer to any of these questions. But it's about people, and when we talk about people, it's a complex thing. So I'm going to start the story. We have Steve and we have Nick here tonight. And the story starts a few months ago, 6 months ago now, we know, right? And 6 months ago, at about 9 o'clock, 9:15 in the morning, right around October, September, October, I was walking into the police station and I was talking to a sergeant in the parking lot. And I see this gentleman, Steve, very nicely dressed. He walks up and he's standing there, you know, as I'm talking to the sergeant and appearing as if he wanted to talk to me. So I said, okay, Sarge, see you later. And so I turned to him and I said, sir, can I help you? And he said, yeah, I'm a dad and I need some help. And I said, okay, let's go inside and talk. And we went inside and we talked. And that's the start of the story. So, Steve, take it from there.
Yeah, that was a pretty bleak day in my life. I own a plumbing company, and I have a lot of friends, and I network with everybody, and I was in the Bedford Building Department parking lot going, I've never felt so alone in my entire life. I had gotten news from Nick's mom that he was suicidal, there was a gun involved, there was drugs. Please reach out to him. I don't think I'm making any progress. He was living with his mom at the time, and I just remember going, I can't believe I'm so lost here. And I think one of the problems is that I was trying to do this all on my own, and as a family we were all trying to do it together, and we weren't really opening up to the resources. So I look to my left and a police cruiser goes by, then another one, and I said, hey idiot, the cavalry's here, like get out of the car, you can do this. And it took a lot of courage to go up to the policeman and say, I'm struggling. You know, I didn't want to say, hey, I'm Steve with Paradigm. You know, I just wanted to say I'm a father and I'm scared, and all I could see was myself on the news going, we did everything we could. I can't believe it was my son that did this, that, you know, he shot somebody or killed himself or something was going bad. And I told the chief, I said, this isn't we're not in a good spot. And I was feeling so down that I couldn't even believe that the chief was like, well, come on in and let's talk. I'm like, wow, like you're gonna talk with me? Like that's how I felt. I felt like it wasn't a big deal to other people what we were going through, but it was. And the chief made me feel really welcomed, and we sat down and I told him everything, spilled my guts about all of what we had all been going through as a family. We tried detoxing Nick when he finally had said that he had a problem. But Nick, as well as us, we were proud. We didn't want anybody to know. We went to Massachusetts, and they actually tested him 3 different times, and he didn't test for heroin. So we kept saying, you must be making a mistake. And they pretty much shipped him out, and we got a private doctor, paid the money, and got him introduced to the medicines that he needed, you know, all the stuff to detox in the house. And you know, we thought we were going to do good. My ex-wife moved in for a few days with my wife and myself and Nick, and we were going to do this. And Nick was really scared, but he really wanted it. And the biggest thing that I can say to everybody out there is that there are people that can help you on this fight against this deadly disease, and that if you're open to asking for help, that's a big thing. But I think that the biggest thing that helped Nick was the education. And he learned that at the Farnham Center with Easter seals.
So Nick, your dad started the story, and one thing I know from talking to folks in your position and talking from you, how courageous you are, and how deep your character runs to be able to commit to a change. Tell us a little bit about sort of what led you to make that decision. Tell us your story. How did you get there, and what made the change?
My name's Nick. I'm a recovering heroin addict. You know, I was your average kid. I played sports when I was younger. I lived with my dad. You know, I had a really great childhood and stuff. I got mixed up with the wrong people when I was in high school, doing pills and hanging around with the wrong crowd. You know, I did pills for a really long time, and I moved over. My cousin had told me to try heroin, and I couldn't get pills that night, so I decided I'd try heroin. And you know, if it didn't work, I would resort to doing the pills afterwards. So I tried the heroin once, and it was a lot better than doing the pills, and it was cheaper. So I decided to keep doing the heroin. I'd go days with, you know, I'd get sick every morning. I'd have to go and see the dope dealer every morning. You know, before work, in the middle of work, like, it didn't matter. You know, when I was sick, I was doing whatever I could. Going to my dad's house, trying to get guns from there that I owned to sell to people to get money to get more dope. You know, and I had tried quitting, like my father said. We went down to Massachusetts, and you know, I didn't really want it per se to quit. I think I did, but I didn't at the same time. And right after I had stayed at the house for like a week, and a week wasn't long enough, I decided to just go back out, and I went out on another run, and decided to keep using and hanging around with the wrong people. I lied to my doctor. I told him that I had an anxiety problem, and he prescribed me Xanax bars, and I was doing a bar a day of Xanax and doing heroin on top of it, or fentanyl, whatever I could get my hands on. I was going to the methadone clinic also, and when I went there, I faked it the whole time, kept telling them I was sick so they'd bring my dose up as high as they possibly could. I was on 220 milligrams of methadone, so it wasn't, you know, it wasn't pretty. I got fired from my job, kicked out of my house. I was nodding out every night at the kitchen table. Parents didn't know what to do with me. It was, you know, getting kicked out of my house and losing my job was pretty much my rock bottom. And then I got pulled over by the Bedford Police Department. I was passed out on the side of the road. I had done a bunch of Xanax that day. I had no job. I decided, you know, whatever, screw it, I'll just get high all day with the little money that I have. And I woke up to a police officer knocking on the window, and I got a DUI for it. You know, and lost my license, and I had nowhere really to go. And you know, my dad went to go talk to the Bedford Police Department, and he told them my story, what was going on, and they told him that they could help. And they knew of a place called the Farnham Center in Manchester, and that they could get me in there as long as I came to the police department. I really didn't want to go to the police department. I figured living underneath a bridge, you know, with me and drugs and, you know, no one else by my side was perfectly fine. I didn't really care at all. You know, drugs was the main priority, what was going to get me through the day so I wasn't sick again. And at that point, it wasn't really to the point of, you know, feeling a high effect. It was, I need to like make it through the day and not be sick at all. It was really bad. And I ended up talking to my dad. We moved all my stuff out of my mother's house when I got kicked out. And that night, he brought me to the police. He asked me if I would go to the police station. I said, sure. He kind of tricked me into it a little bit, but I decided I would go. And so we went there, and you know, we were there for probably 45 minutes sitting there, and you know, I wasn't sure. They told me what, you know, what they could do for me. We could go to the Farnham right now. We could just hop inside the cruiser. I had my bags packed already. You know, I didn't really want to. I figured, like I said, you know, I'd rather be underneath a bridge, you know, not being sick every day, getting high, and, you know, being by myself, because I was isolated from people. Everyone wanted me to stop using, and you know, I didn't want to stop. And all the people that wanted me to stop, I didn't want to be around. So I ended up going to the Farnham Center. I went for 7 days. I wanted to get out after 7 for the detox. My mother told me I should stay longer, and I already had a plan in my head, you know, 7 days, I can make it 7 days, I'll go back out, and everyone will think, oh, I'm fine. You know, everything's great. He's, you know, he went to detox, he's all better now. So, well, that wasn't the case. My mom told me that I had to stay in there for 28 days. So when I was in there for my 28 days after the detox, that's kind of when I saw like a white light kind of, and realized that I got put on the doorstep of that Farnham Center for like a reason. You know, and I wasn't feeling as sick as I was. I was coming down off of everything. I didn't take any Suboxone when I was in detox. I went cold turkey the whole time. I had been to the Suboxone doctors before, and I just knew that I would probably end up coming out with an addiction to that or something. Everyone's different. So yeah, I hung out, and you know, my parents visited me while I was in there. They saw that I was doing better. You know, I graduated from the program. I was a peer leader inside there. I took it really seriously. I really wanted to get clean after I wasn't sick anymore. You know, waking up every morning, being happy to be alive. You know, I definitely probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my parents showing me tough love, kicking me out of the house, you know, my dad firing me from my job, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. I think tough love really helped with it. So I graduated the program, and I got, you know, together with a sponsor, and I was with a sponsor for, you know, a whole month. We went to meetings every single day. And I think that was the hardest time when you get out of rehab, is like the first month, because you have all these people texting you and telling you whether or not, like, you know, how is rehab? Are you clean? Are you still using? Do you wanna go grab something? And you just have to be able to tell these people, you know, that, you know, you're all set with that lifestyle. I was fed up with it. You know, I didn't have any money. You know, so my dad asked me to come back to work for him. And you know, I really liked my job there. It was really nice. You know, I was treated right. You know, I have a great boss. So I went back to work with him, and one of his employees decided that he would ask if I would go live with him. You know, so that was, you know, I decided to go live with him, and I've been there since for about 6 months now. I've been clean. I have an amazing job. I have a beautiful girlfriend. My family's really supportive. Yeah.
Steve, I remember when we were talking in the police station that first morning, I remember I asked you, do you still have a dialogue with Nick, right? and you said that you did. And for me, that was kind of a goldstone important element, because I knew that if you still had a dialogue with him, there was a chance that you could get to him and get him into the police station. Because I knew if we could get him to the PD, that my officers would do their thing as best they could, right? No guarantee, I told you, but do their thing. And you told me you did have a dialogue. And tell us about how important it was to you to maintain that dialogue with Nick, even though as bad as things were. And you had told me that, you know, you had fired him, and I mean, it had gone south for a while, right?
Well, Nick wanted, when he got kicked out of his mom's, he wanted to borrow my trailer, and I'm like, I can't let him take the trailer. I may never get it back. I might get racked up. I mean, I was thinking all kinds of crazy things, and I says, no, I'll come and help you. So he was like, no, I don't want you to, and I said, no, I want to. And that was really a big thing. We ended up picking him up with the trailer, loading all his stuff. Nick wasn't right when I went and picked him up, and it wasn't a nice scene. And I just kept my head together, knowing the big picture, you know, just we'll make it through this. When we got to his mom's storage place, that wasn't big enough to hold all the stuff that we had in 2 trucks. This is how messed up he was. It was really tough because, you know, he's like, I'm looking at 2 trucks and a trailer full of stuff in the storage containers this big, and I'm going, this isn't gonna work. And so I just looked at him, and I kind of paused, and I said, you know, Nick, you don't have a place to live, and you don't have any money, you don't have a job. I said, I'll put in any amount of money to get you clean. I'm not gonna give you any money, but I will get any amount of money, I don't care, as long as it's going to benefit you and get you off of this. I says, we'll go store your stuff. I said, if you decide you don't want to store your stuff, and then you're on your own. I pretty much was just, I knew what I wanted. I wanted either a clean and sober son, or I was just going to gamble to say, you know what, I've already been through quite a bit with you. I just have to be strong. And so that's what I ended up doing.
And that's probably one of the toughest things for a parent to do, right, is to use that tough love. And you talked about, you know, tough love being an important element in bringing you to the point where you decided to make your own decision. And so, you know, tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, you know, it's kind of a personal thing, I know, and you don't have to go into the details if you don't want, but you know, so many parents and so many other people that I talk to whose kids and loved ones didn't make it, aren't sitting where you are. They're gone. And when you look back and you sort of dissect those stories, there's a constant theme of like enabling. Like they always bailed them out every single time, over and over and over and over and over, sometimes multiple times. And in this story, it seems like there was a point where Steve said that I can't do this anymore, and now you look back and reflect on it and say that was an important thing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my father was always like the tough one growing up. He was real strict, always showed me tough love when, you know, he needed to, you know, prove his point, you know, that things needed to change, you know. And my mother was more like the fun one. My parents are divorced. And I would go, you know, I used to live with my father, but things got too strict there, and tough love was too much for me. So I went to go live with the fun parent, the one that, you know, would let me go out till whenever at night and do whatever. And I didn't really have, you know, per se, so many rules at all. I could skate by in school, you know, failing classes, but just making it enough to graduate to the next year, and things were okay. I stayed in communication with my dad, just talking, but I never wanted to live there again because of the tough love. You know, tough love really hit me when my mom decided to kick me out, because she'd never shown me like tough love before. Like, you know, she'd never had to kick me out before, or, you know, I would get yelled at and stuff, but I mean, that was nothing compared to, you know, my father kicking me out at, you know, 16 years old. Well, not kicking me, telling me, you know, you can live here and live by my rules, or go live with your mother. And I thought it would be more fun to live with the fun parent. you know, but yeah, when my mom kicked me out of the house, that was kind of it. I didn't really have anywhere to go. You know, that was like my only saving grace. I mean, I had aunts and uncles and stuff, but you know, I wasn't going to ask them. I always relied on my mother to be there for like my second resort. My father, when it came to money, was the last. You know, I don't really know how to go into like tough love, I mean, any more than really that, I guess.
So it kind of brought you to the point where you were really stuck between a rock and a hard spot, right? I mean, you know,
yeah,
you
it hit my rock bottom.
You hit your, and everybody has
their own, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had hit mine, and that was enough for me to kind of open my eyes and see that there was a problem.
Yeah. When you were in the middle of this, and you said that you had a circle of friends, so-called friends at that point, that were doing the same thing, did you lose any of those friends? I mean, did any of them die from overdoses, people that you knew?
I had one friend who died from an overdose. He was actually a plumber just like me. We would run together all the time down to Massachusetts. He actually passed away this month. I believe it was this month, right? He passed away this month. You know, when I came out of rehab, he was clean and things were going good with him. You know, I thought things were all right with him. I didn't have a license, so I couldn't meet up with him or go to meetings with him or anything. So, you know, I heard through the grapevine that he had passed away and that it was due to an overdose. And that's really the only friend that I've ever had that I've lost, like, to death. I mean, I've lost countless amounts of friends, family, everything. I mean, you know, I just wanted to be isolated and away from everyone at one point. But that's the only death that's really happened in my life, per se, so far. I mean, there's still people that I know that are using every day, but I can't help them. They have to help themselves, just like I helped myself. You got to be willing.
Did the fact that fentanyl, you never knew one bag to the next what you were going to get, obviously that never stopped you though, right? It never, in the throes of what you needed to do, you just needed to get well every day, and it obviously didn't stop you, right?
No, for a long time I was actually addicted to fentanyl instead of heroin, because that was all that was around. You know, I wasn't an IV user, but I know people that were, and they would overdose all the time because they would get like a bag that was fentanyl instead of heroin, but no one can really tell the difference. You look at the bag and it's basically the same. Some people put, you know, brown mascara inside of it and make it so it has a tannish color to it, so you don't know that it's fentanyl. You know, it's just a way for the drug market to make more money.
Well, Steve, let me turn the clock back maybe a few years and tell the folks, some parents either here or maybe listening and later watch this on BCTV, what sort of triggered you in your mind that you knew that something was going on with Nick? You know, what did you see? What did you begin to notice? I remember you told me certain things about behavior, and I know there's always parents that always ask in these presentations, you know, what do I look for? You know, I don't know what to look for. Give me some signs. I mean, do I go search his room? Do I search her room? Do I search her car? I mean, tell me what to look for. I mean, what if anything, did you sort of see in your experience?
I mean, the biggest thing is money. You know, you follow the money trail that leads you right to the problems wherever they might lie. You know, we happened to, my wife co-signed a loan for Nick, so she had access to his bank account. She had access to him making the payments. So she would look and she'd be like, he doesn't have enough money in the account, you know. And so that was constantly upsetting her. And the $20 and the $40 withdrawals, that was another thing. You know, I didn't know a lot of Nick's friends or you know, the guy friends. You know, he'd have a girlfriend, and then I'd get to know her, and Nick would hang out. You know, there'd be a backpack, and there'd be, you know, a trip to the bathroom, you know, without the backpack, but the, you know, with that type of, that's some of what I saw. You know, it was watching him be moody too. You know, he'd go from mood swings where he'd be like really happy and just like talking to me. I'm like, I was so happy he was in a good mood that I was like kind of masked as a parent, where I had the blinders on, where I was just like, wow, my son's so happy, this is great, we're getting to hang out, and really going, well, why is he so happy? And why is his mood swinging upward like that? So, you know, other people would be like, is Nick okay? Is he on something? Or I'm like, oh no, he's in a great mood. You know, he's like me. That's great. Got my son back. And you kind of live this this fairy tale, because I think in your mind you just want what you want, and you want your son happy. You want to be happy. You know, he was living with his mom. Anytime I got to be with him, that was special times. You know, I didn't want to ruin it with, you know, being a parent and being strict, and I just wanted him to be happy and us to have fun together. You know, I wanted to be the fun parent for a little while too, and so some of it was that, and I missed some of what was going on, but other people would tell me, you know, and that's the signs that I saw.
Nick, same question to you. A lot of parents really are concerned. They don't know what to look for. You know, from your side of the fence, you know, having lived through it, survived it, what would you tell parents? Parents, loved ones with teenagers or older kids, folks. You know, what would you kind of tell them to look for, and how to deal with what they see and understand what they see, because you can see and not see, right?
Yeah, I would a really good one was like the money thing. That one really, you were able to, like, every time there was money missing from the account or whatever, you were able to see what was going on. You know, there'd be $40 or $60 withdrawn or $20, and, you know, every single day, or like 4 times a day. I mean, why would someone be going to an ATM 4 times a day to pull out $40 or whatever the amount may be? You know, another one, my mother used to search my room all the time. You know, people I didn't like that, you know. I didn't want people going through my stuff at all. But she was able to catch me, you know, with empty bags, because as a drug addict, we don't really care where stuff goes. We'll just throw a bag, you know, in the trash can, and, you know, my mother would go through the trash can and find stuff in there. You know, the bathroom's a good one. If people are like going to the bathroom all the time, I used to do all my drugs in the bathroom all the time. It's another real good sign. I mean, my dad pretty much summed it up pretty good in a nutshell. I mean, that's, you know, those are pretty much the signs that you would look for someone using. You know, not spending a lot of time with you, always out with friends. I barely spent any time with my family, because I didn't, obviously if I was high in front of them, they were gonna, you know, they would see that I was high, and, you know, I would get in trouble for that. So I would just hang out with friends all the time. Come home late at night when everyone's sleeping. No one knows whether you're high or not, because they're all in bed, and then you just crawl into bed at night. Yeah.
We did a 6-month fist bump about an hour ago, right? 6 months?
Yeah.
And one of the things you just mentioned, and you mentioned previously, was the people that you were with when you were using. And now that's changed. And tell us how important that is for you now, and what it was then as opposed to what it is now. I mean, the fact that you've kind of severed maybe one lifestyle and one group for another group.
Yeah, I mean, I have people that I used to hang out with and party all the time that still text me and want to hang out with me. I decide not to, because I know that if I go to hang out with them, you know, one drink will lead to me getting drunk, and me getting drunk is going to lead me right back down to using heroin or pills, whatever it may be. I don't drink at all either. That's another thing. You know, because I'm afraid that if I am drunk, like I said, that I'm gonna want to use. So I don't drink at all. You know, the friends that I was hanging out with before, they just wanted, you know, someone to get high with. You become so lonely getting high by yourself when you want someone to get high with you. You want someone to hang out with you, and not to be a friend, I guess. You know, to be there and, you know, have someone you can rely on when you don't have any money. You can ask your friend, hey man, could you, like, you know, give me some money till Friday? I get paid on Friday. And half the time you wouldn't get paid back, or I wouldn't pay someone back because the money would be gone on Friday. You know, I have true friends now that I hang out with that don't do drugs. They drink occasionally, but I don't, you know, I don't drink at all. When they're drinking, that's what they do. I have fun soberly. You know, these people would have my back in a fight. You know, with anything. If I needed a place to go, they would be there for me, where I didn't have that before. I mean, I got kicked out of my parents' house. I couldn't call anyone in my phone that I used with to come give me a hand. You know, and I have that now, you know. And my group of friends probably is, you know, I can count them on a hand now. And I don't need any more than that. You know, I'm happy with the people that I have. But yeah.
So that's a really important element. It's that circle of people, the people that you can trust and rely on, that are looking out for you. You know, looking out for Nick because, you know, they love Nick and they want you to succeed and be well. And the other thing I get from listening to you, and you know, I've talked to a lot of people in your situation over almost 40 years, and they're all different. But one thing that I hear from you tonight is that it's a day-to-day thing. Still, after 6 months, it's you still think about it. It's still something that it's a disease. You still have it, and you know you have it, and you have to work on it every single day, right?
Yeah, I mean, it gets better as the days go on. The first month was the hardest month for me. I have days now where, you know, I've gone weeks without having a craving or thinking about using or anything. It's like anything, you know, that you step away from. Say smoking, you know, for the first, you know, few months or so, you're going to want to pick up a cigarette again, and you're going to think about it when you see other people. You know, it gets better as time goes on.
Yeah.
I don't find myself thinking about it nearly as much as I used to when I first got out of rehab. I would have dreams about it every night. The dreams have vanished down to maybe a couple times a month now, but I mean, you can't do anything about the dreams, but you know, it does get better. It really does.
So there is hope.
People don't believe that it does. I wasn't a believer. I didn't think that it would, the like sensation of wanting to use would ever go away, but it does. It really does.
You got to be strong. You got to work at it.
Yeah.
And you got to stick with it. And you need to have help.
You need support.
You need support. And you had support.
Yeah.
That's a critical thing, right?
Yeah, we all do, you know. I mean, you came to my rescue, you know. I'll be indebted to you forever. You know, I really appreciate you. You know, I think what I'm seeing in the community is that from the fire department, the police officers, to, you know, mayors and governors and senators, and everyone wants to be a part of this. You know, I really believe with my whole heart that a lot of good is going to come out of this. I mean, it will join us deeper and deeper together as a human race. You know, to me, I feel that this is a form of terrorism. You know, I think that they're trying to take our youth. They're trying to take the good people. It's not just somebody who's homeless on the street. These are, I know people that are very, very successful that are in this problem, and I think it's definitely going to take everybody to figure it out, and a lot of good's coming out. Like, look, we're getting to be really close friends. You know, everywhere you go, something wonderful happens. We're all together as a community today, reaching out, holding each other's hands, and being there for one another and supportive. I mean, this matters. What we're doing matters, and I think that if we can find the small little bits of gold here, we'll figure it all out together. But it's definitely something that we need to be more vocal. I mean, Nick and I never thought we were going to talk about heroin in public to anybody, you know, but we don't care. We just want to help, and we care about people. And there were people here that came to our rescue, like you, and and our friends and people who have stood behind us, not going, oh geez, you know, they're addicts. You know, I mean, Nick has inspired me not to drink. I told him I'm never drinking again. I don't care if I ever have another drop of alcohol. And like he said too, at first I was like, wow, that's kind of a big thing, but I wanted to be supportive of Nick. But then it was like, it's not a big deal. You know, like I have a blast being sober. I really do. And I hang out with people who are drinking too, which, you know, they're not drunk. They're just social drinkers, and they have no problem with it. And it's just, it feels safe and right, and it's okay. I don't think that alcohol's the devil. You know, it's just a way that I feel better functioning, and I'm inspired by Nick to not ever have a drink again, which is okay.
One last question I'm going to put to Nick before I open up questions to the audience. How important is it for parents and loved ones to talk to their kids or their loved ones about drugs? I mean, from your point of view, how important is that? You know, we hear all these numbers about how important it is for parents to talk to kids about drugs early on. You have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I would talk to your kids right away about it. I wouldn't hold back to talk to your kids about doing drugs. I would have conversations, see if they're using. You know, I don't think that anyone's, you know, kid is going to be like, yes, I'm using heroin. I mean, I never said that until like I had like a breaking through point, and I did say that I had a problem. But yeah, I think that it's important to have conversations with your kids about using drugs. You know, yeah.
Important just to start the dialogue. Pretty young, right?
Yeah.
Just start the conversation.
They used to do the DARE program when I was in school. I think I was in like maybe elementary school or middle school. So I think you know, kids get, you know, introduced into drugs around middle school age, and there's certain kids that are doing it, and they, you know, for some reason I wanted to be like the kids that were using drugs because they were popular. So you go to hang out with those types of people, and next thing you know, you're using drugs.
So, questions from the audience?
I think you're big here.
Well, we have to make sure that the TV folks can get.
You mentioned at the beginning that you did pills a lot. Could you name some pills, and which pills in a household would be the most popular for kids to raid without their parents or grandparents knowing?
I would say any opioid type of pill. I mean, that's what I was into. I know that kids also do Adderall. There's muscle relaxer pills that people take, antidepressant pills. There's all sorts of pills out there. I don't know them all off the top of my head, but I'm an opiate user, and I would always go for an opioid. So like an
Percocets?
Percocet, yeah, you know.
Oxys?
Yep.
Oxycontin? Oxycodone?
Yep.
Yeah. Questions?
Did you have a stop button?
Did I have a stop button as
Stop
in,
button.
like,
I've worked, or I've seen young people or older folks that there was no stop button, that they would hit a blackout and they would just continue to use pills or whatever. Did you ever find with yourself, this is enough, I can't do anymore, I'm going to overdose?
I've never overdosed before myself. I was into inhalation, so snorting my drugs, and I have never blacked out before. I've puked a ton of times. I've never really had an overdose problem, and I mean, I have used a lot in one sitting before, and I just never had that happen to me, where there was a stop button per se. I mean, the higher you could get, the better it was, I guess, would be the answer.
Nick, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really powerful and courageous of you to do. One of the things that this that BeBOLD does and our group is trying to do is to really change the conversation that once somebody becomes addicted to drugs, it's really no longer a choice. It's not like you say, okay, I'm just not going to take today. How, from your perspective, what are ways in which we can help change that conversation? When people have a physical disease, most people are really sympathetic to that. But when it comes to drugs and alcohol, it's harder for people to get on board to understand what a struggle it is. Do you have any thoughts about how we can change around that conversation?
To have them, I would say, to get more knowledge about it. I mean, I'm not sure if I understand the question like correctly, but I mean, I go to meetings a lot, and that keeps you from wanting to use. Hanging out with other addicts that are sober, that have long periods of sobriety, is definitely one way. And like you said, yeah, it is a disease, and there's really no cure for it. You're gonna live with it every day. But you hanging around with those people that have been sober for a long period of time is going to help keep you sober. If you're hanging out with, a buddy you used to use with, and he's a month clean like you, one of you could suck each other back down the road to doing whatever, whatever the drug of choice is. But I think, yeah, definitely like going to meetings is totally a big one.
So information and knowledge at some point, and I think I know Steve mentioned it, and you've mentioned it now. You kind of went through this learning process about really what it is that's happening to you, and that helps you understand more about what you need to do. Is that kind of where we get to?
Yeah, I mean, even having this talk tonight even helps me. I'm reliving my past. I told you guys my story, how miserable it was. I get to listen to my dad, tell how much I hurt him from doing drugs, and, the pain and misery I've caused him, not just in his bank account, but to his heart. So I get something out of doing this tonight. And, that's another part of my program that I work, doing service work to, help other families and communities out. Educating the public about this. It's not going to go away. It's always going to be there. The more knowledge that people get about it, the better it's going to get.
In educating the public and talking about the fact that this is occurring, and we use the term destigmatize it, but that means to me is to make sure that everyone knows that this can happen to anybody. It's stop. You talked about we wanted to not tell anybody. You wanted to keep it quiet. You wanted to get your own private doctor, and while you did that, ultimately that makes it more difficult, right, to succeed.
Oh yeah, because that's how I solve all my problems. Is I tell everybody, and whether it's a plumbing problem or a family problem, I talk about it to people that I love and trust, and everyone has the answers. You can't figure it out by yourself on a lot of planes because you're right in the weeds. You can't see through them, but other people can pick out your problems quicker than you can, and you have to rely and leverage those relationships, and that's, another thing too I wanted to mention about Nick and his program that I was really proud of him is that he went through the month that his mom said stay through the month. You're getting two different types of addicts that are going through those programs. Like Nick decided to go through the month program. There are people who you may mandate, right, or courts may mandate, you need to go through a 30-day. Nick could probably speak on seeing some of those people going through that program versus somebody who really wants to be there. He wanted to be there so much that 2 weeks into it, I was at Farnham Center writing a letter on a piece of paper like this, crying my eyes out, saying, please come back to work for me. Not, oh, well, I'll hire you back if you're going to be good and clean. No. In 2 weeks, I knew from having the talks with him, I was like, I would be blessed if you would come back to Paradigm. I love you, I'm so proud of you. Please give us a second chance. You know, that's a powerful letter that I feel, and how I saw the growth within him, that he could have left at any time. It wasn't a jail sentence. It wasn't something that was mandated by anyone, and it was a really special time for him, and for him to be a leader there too, where, you know, he was cooking and cleaning, right? You're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So he was even being a leader in his hardest time of recovery, was proving to me that, you know, that I had my son back, which was really amazing. It's really great.
You both are very strong. Thank you for sharing your story. Question for Nick. Did you start with alcohol and or pot, and if so, at what age?
I started smoking marijuana at, I want to say I was 15 years old. I know I was in middle school, and a kid had it there, and I was, you know, I'm one of those, or was one of those kids that wanted to try everything once, or would try everything once. You know, once isn't going to lead me down a, you know, a bad road, or keep, you know, make me addicted. But yeah, I started smoking weed when I was 15 years old, and when I started drinking, I'm not really sure when, like, I had my first alcoholic beverage, but I know I was drinking pretty hard when I was 16 years old. We would go over my buddy's house, and his parents would be sleeping, and he had an older brother, and we would get alcohol from him. And we would drink. Like, I remember a time where we drank so much, one of the kids got alcohol poisoning, and he had to go to the hospital because of it. We just didn't know better at that age, and we didn't know what would happen from it, I guess. Yeah. You know, it starts at a young age. I started doing pills when I was 16 too, but it was the same people I was hanging out with. His father had pills at the house. He had Crohn's disease, and we were doing Percocet 10s, 10 milligrams, and there was a big bottle of them, and he wouldn't know how many were missing, so we would grab them by like the handful some nights, and he would hide them, and we'd search the house to find them. I mean, it's just, yeah.
So it's really important to get rid of that stuff that's in the medicine cabinet.
Thank you so much for being here tonight and for being vulnerable and open to us. I do believe that this is exactly how we create change. By what you're talking about, asking for help, sharing stories, peeling back the curtains, you know, the secrecy, the isolation, that's the space where this hides, you know, this disease creeps in. So I am grateful for that, and I believe we learn from each other, you know, that more heads are better than one in terms of finding solutions around this. So I know that this could be a whole nother conversation, but I know that insight so many times is not what leads to change. Education is so important, don't get me wrong, and I agree with everything that you're saying, and we need to continue to educate and have early intervention and all of those things, but in isolation, insight is not what leads to a shift. Somebody could know that smoking is bad for them, and they do it anyways, right? Or knowing that shooting up heroin could create risk, that's not it alone. And I know that you talked about behavior changing, the support system that you're around, going from one that isn't to one that is. Anything else that you can say in terms of what creates change and what could create a shift for, I mean, you can only speak to yourself. I know it's different
That's
for
fine.
everyone, but.
I mean, you're gonna, the user is going to stop when they want to stop. You guys can push as hard as you want. My dad had tried for years. I started using heroin when I was 20 years old. I'm almost 24 now. You know, and the whole time they were trying to have me stop. They knew what was going on. My mother was waking up every day, checking me in my room to make sure I wasn't dead after, you know, the long night. But seriously, it comes down to the addict, whether or not they want to get clean. And you get to a point where you hit your rock bottom. I went into, you know, the Farnham Center for the detox, and you know, at first I was like, I'm gonna fool them, you know, I'm gonna go to this for 7 days, they'll think I'm all better, I can come back home, live there, everything will be good, I'll hit up the dope dealer right when I get back, you know, they'll think I'm a changed person, no one's gonna know. But, you know, I decided to stay. I didn't want to, but something inside me told me to. And that's kind of when I had like a white light kind of experience, where I wanted to actually get like help and stay clean. And I did every single thing that they asked me to when I was in the residential side of the recovery center.
Hi, thanks again for talking and sharing your story tonight. Speaking on that same kind of question, I'll be specific. Was there any faith that you developed? Was that any part of helping you maybe make some changes in your decision-making, your thinking-making process, whatever religion you may or may not have been brought up in? Did that have an impact at all?
No, my family's really religious. They brought me up in like Catholic church and stuff like that, but that wasn't what did it. I think with my head being clear in the detox and going to rehab, my first step was getting me to rehab. But once I got in there and my head was clear after the, you know, like 6 days or 7 days that I was in there, you know, you can start to think more clearly. It's not the drug that's thinking for you. The whole time that you're using, when you're sick, it's basically the drug asking you, you know, that telling you that you need to use again or you're not going to feel normal. You know, if you got a cold yesterday and you didn't feel good, then you could take something to make that cold go away just like that. You'd do it every single day so you'd never have that cold. It's the same thing that we go through. But having a clear mind definitely helps you with deciding what you want to do, you know, with your addiction.
Got time for one or two more questions. Anybody else?
Got a quick one. Just in terms of the Farnham Center and how readily that was available, and I know if opioid abusers go to the firehouse or police station, is the Farnham Center always available at this point? What is availability for help?
Well, I can't say the population changes, and of course the demand is strong each and every day. The Bedford Police Department entered into a program last June with Hope for New Hampshire, which at that time had a relationship with the Farnham Center. We still have that relationship with Hope for New Hampshire, and what led us to be able to facilitate Nick going into the Farnham Center was our relationship with Hope, which we still have. And we know that if we call Hope right now, actually in some occasions they've actually beat the bail commissioner there to come pick him up, because we know that that window of opportunity is like open like this much. And if you don't capitalize on that window of opportunity, it may be open for 10 or 15 minutes for some people, maybe an hour for two, maybe a day for another. If you don't get them through that window immediately, you're going to lose them. And so that's why timing is critically important for us, and that's what's important with our relationship with Hope, in that we call up and they're there in 10, 15 minutes, and off they go. So we're building capacity. We're much better than we were. Just by comparison, when we started looking at these numbers about 2 years ago, there were more drug treatment beds in Tampa, Florida than there were in the state of New Hampshire at that time. We've begun slowly to fill that gap. There's been some positive changes in insurance that have helped things out as well. And so we're gradually building capacity. And one note on pills. You talked about pills and medicine cabinets. Let me give you a sobering stat here, Mr. Numbers again, right? The prescription drug monitoring program for New Hampshire, and I just looked at those numbers, the latest numbers, before I came out tonight, which were from October of 15 to October of 16, right? Schedule 2, which are the Percocets, OxyContins, that level of opioids, right? 45.5 million dosage units of those opioids were prescribed in the state of New Hampshire between October of 15 and October of 16. 45.5 million. Do the math. There's 1.3 million people in the state of New Hampshire. That's 35 pills for every man, woman, and child in the state of New Hampshire, right? That's what leads us to that big bottle of Percocet 10s sitting in the medicine cabinet. And that's another problem that we're slowly working on. One more question and we're done.
Comment to your question. So we've been through this 3 times right now with one of our children. And as far as the Farnham Center question is concerned, if they're not high, you can't get them in. So if you are fortunate enough to protect them that night and you want to get them in the next morning, if they're clean and sober that morning, you can't get them in. If they go to Farnham and then you want to get them into rehab, like a place like Brattleboro Retreat in Vermont, if they're not high or drunk, you can't get them in. Doesn't matter what your resources are, you can't get them in. So I think it's very important for people to understand how, I love your story, but you kind of have the story with the perfect ending at this point. We've been through this 3 times and we don't have a perfect ending. And it's very, very difficult to get people in, and my feeling is, in most cases, 30 days rehab is not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. The other thing I would recommend to prevent something that you brought up, which I thought was a great point, codependent relationships. So he mentioned if you're hanging out with somebody who's a month clean and they're a month clean, you can drag each other in. Rehab should be gender specific. We have suffered through this to the death of one of our child's friends, boyfriend. And so I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. There are a lot more, we need more Farnham centers. We need 10 Farnham centers just between Nashua and Manchester. So it's just something to think about.
Thanks so much. There's, I don't know if there is a perfect ending. I've been in this business for 40 years.
I could go out and use tomorrow. I could wake up and...
I do understand that.
I think that the story of drug abuse and substance abuse, whether it's opioids, whether it's alcohol, any kind of substance, is a story that has been part of my life for almost 40 years. It didn't start yesterday. It's not going to end tomorrow. There are no perfect endings to any of these stories. People that have been sober for 30 years are still struggling. And it's a complex, difficult, socio-economic, cultural situation that if we had an answer to it, we could solve a lot of problems in this country. We are the country of the world that suffers with this the most per capita. Why? It's anybody's guess. But it's a complex problem and it involves a complex solution. But it also takes courage, it takes compassion, it takes caring, it takes commitment, it takes strength, it takes character. And not to say that people that have gone through it and not had a good result don't have all those things. They do. And that's the struggle that we have with substance abuse in this country. Everyone, the human is the most complex piece of machinery on the planet, and everybody's different. And one thing that I think that I'll end with, and that is, I've dealt with co-workers in DEA that have had children in substance abuse treatment. One of them in Philadelphia, his son went through 8 cycles of treatment and recovery, 8 over the course of several years before there was a solution. But one thing that's common that Nick talked about a couple of times, and that is everyone has to find their own bottom, whatever that bottom is. And sometimes it helps someone has to help them find that bottom, to help them recognize that that is a bottom for them. But that's pretty true that I've seen in my 40 years, is that recognition that they've reached the end. And once they know that, there's something inside, as you say, that white light moment occurs. And it just happens. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to bring up a couple of things before we end. First, I want to remind everyone that our next Be Bold speaker series is March 27th at 7 p.m. here in the library. It's going to be about social liability, and that in terms of alcohol-related parties. Bedford has numbers in terms of alcohol use amongst teens that are worse than the region and worse than the state, and getting worse every year. And so we're going to have a team here from the police department, prosecutors, to talk about social liability. What is the liability of having alcohol in your house and having parties and not paying attention to what's going on with teens and young folks when they drink, and what the aftermath and what could happen. So that's going to be an interesting topic. And I certainly want to remember and remind everyone that we're having a full fundraiser for BeBOLD at Chipotle on March 8th. So don't eat on March 7th. Go to Chipotle on March 8th and spend a lot of money, and bring everybody else that's also hungry to Chipotle on March 8th. And finally, I know that, I think, Steve, did you want to read something that you had there?
Yeah, there was a time when I was really struggling at Paradigm. One of my friends, Elmer, gave me this. It's called Don't Quit, and I passed out some of them. It said, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a failure turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the cloud of doubt. And you may never tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit.
Let's have a hand for a couple of courageous people here tonight, folks, and I want to thank them for coming and for stepping out of that comfort zone, talking about things that are tough to talk about. But I think that when we talked about before we came here, if it helps one person tonight, then we made it successful. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.
Anytime.